And this is just a simple illustration of the dose to the gonads and the bone marrow. And that is why, in fact, this is one of the secrets of cell phones. They are always tested in a holster. They are never tested in the pocket.
If phones were tested in pockets, they would exceed the as-tested exposure guidelines.
Dr. Davis, you said that a cell phone should not be kept any closer than an inch to your body. Is that what you said? I don't know where does that come from?
That actually comes from the BlackBerry manual as well as from the iPhone manual. If you read the manuals, which almost none of us does, that is what they say. So by calling for warning labels as I am simply calling to codify what the industry is currently telling us about cell phones. And I would also add that when I was privileged to work with Dr. Ronald Herbermann at the University of Pittsburgh Cancer Institute, he looked at the evidence on this issue as one of the world's most distinguished cancer biologists, and he concluded that it was appropriate to warn the staff to take these simple precautions, the same precautions that Israel is recommending, the same precautions that Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden have recommended.
Okay, now let's face it, us men. Now my wife has a BlackBerry, she keeps it in her purse. It's fine. Mm-hmm. We all have these holsters, right? Every man, we all put them on our belts. Mm-hmm. Are you telling me that I should not wear a BlackBerry?
Well, actually,
that when millions of Americans put this phone up next to their ear, even if only for brief periods of time, there are millions of them that wonder whether or not they may be hurting their own health or their children's health. And when there are 110 million Americans are using cell phones, it doesn't take a very large error in terms of identification of adverse medical consequences to have an epidemic-size problem.
So the cell phone's here, is that right?
Correct.
Cell phone's here, and it's a very deep penetration, you're saying. Now, is this kind of penetration of the energy of a cell phone, the radio frequencies, radiation, we're saying, would you say that from looking at this visually, is it your testimony that most of the brain of a child would be would receive some of this energy?
That's correct. Most of the brain, at least on that side of the head, would be absorbing that energy, and it's a simple explanation for it. One is that the skull is considerably thinner in a child, and it doesn't reach maturity until the 20s. In addition to that, the nerves in the brain in an adult are protected by a myelin sheath. In children, the myelin has not fully developed, so there's several reasons for the increased absorption in a child.
What are the considerations with respect to an additional potential risk for children using cell phones?
Children have a configuration of their skull that does allow penetration of cell phone radiation deeper.
Are you saying there's a potentially greater risk?
And in all of these, we're finding that levels can be quite hot, much higher in the younger brain, which has more fluid and a softer skull. There's clearly a higher exposure. And even if the exposures were identical to the child and the adult, the child is not just a little adult. Their brains are less myelinated, they're growing more rapidly, and they need more protection. That's why we put helmets on them. That's why we put them in special car seats until they reach a certain weight. Children need more protection than adults, and our standards do not take that into account.